and welcome to this special edition of Talk Time. My guest today is Mr. Penpa Tsering, the President of the Central Tibetan Administration, or the Tibetan government in exile. He is joining me from the United States this evening. Mr. Penpa Tsering, welcome to this special broadcast.
Thank you for having me. Thank you.
Mr. Tsering, we are speaking at a time when thousands of followers of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the 14th Dalai Lama, are eagerly waiting to celebrate his 90th birthday and also to get some news about his successor or a reincarnation.
Yes, His Holiness is going to be 90 on 6th of July, and we intend to celebrate His Holiness' 90th birthday as the Year of Compassion, which will be celebrated globally. As we speak, there are so many violent conflicts going on around this world. Some say 54 violent conflicts, some say 100 violent conflicts. So the message of peace, nonviolence, and compassion that is rooted in ancient Indian wisdom and manifested through the messages of His Holiness through the world is very, very relevant today. And therefore, I think it's His Holiness' 90th birthday, connecting that with compassion and the message to spread across the world is very, very essential at this point of time.
Right. So, a lot of people are talking about who is going to be his successor, or is there going to be a reincarnation, and a lot of people are expecting that His Holiness is going to make an announcement coinciding with his birthday. My question is, could it even be a woman who could succeed the 14th Dalai Lama?
So far, of course, there have been a lot of speculations, a lot of questions as to who will succeed His Holiness. But I think there has to be a basic understanding of what this reincarnation is all about, because you have so many Buddhist countries around the world, but reincarnation is very unique to Tibetan Buddhism. So reincarnation is a process where a person who lived his life as a reincarnated High Lama during this lifetime is reborn again into a new body to carry on his or her responsibilities. Therefore, it is not something. Of course, there have been speculations about whether it would be a woman, because when His Holiness is asked whether it could be a woman Dalai Lama, His Holiness always says, why not? It could be a woman also. And he also talks about the love that mother gives to a child. And then there is also this other concept of emanation, which is not widely practiced, but it's also practiced in Tibet, which means to say that you appoint somebody before your death to carry on your responsibility. Then the reincarnation is after the demise of the person, then you look for the reincarnation in a new person. So those concepts, I think, need to be very clear. But I'm sure you must have read this book, Voice for the Voiceless.
Absolutely, yes.
This is the latest book by His Holiness the Dalai Lama. And I think that is also a pointer to how His Holiness thinks about his succession or reincarnation, because there it sounds more like His Holiness will be reincarnated rather than emanation or any other processes. So I think this will be made clear when, because the only document that is available on His Holiness reincarnation is the September 2011 document, wherein His Holiness says that when he reaches the age of 90, then he will consult other High Lamas, and then make a statement. So this July 6th will be His Holiness' birthday, and from 2nd to 4th, we have 3 days of conference of high lamas from all traditions of Tibetan Buddhism in Dharamsala, immediately preceding the birthday celebrations. And I'm hoping that His Holiness will address this congregation, and he may, I'm being very specific, he may issue a statement. Earlier, I've been saying, even at 90, if His Holiness feels good, then he might say that it's too early. So you never know. Let's wait for 2 3 more months to hear what His Holiness has to say.
Absolutely. Before I move to other questions, Mr. Tsering, you had said somewhere that there was a dream that said that His Holiness is going to live up to 110 years. So tell us something about that.
We're talking about propitious prescient that this Dalai Lama would live very long, that this Dalai Lama would live up to 113 years of age. And then this is in the form of prophecies that this 14th Dalai Lama will live. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama himself is very committed to living long. So he has been reassuring us that every offering of long life prayer to His Holiness Dalai Lama, His Holiness always said, I'm going to live for another 2 decades and more. Yeah. I'm going to live up to 113 years of age. So I jokingly tell our Chinese friends, this message is for you, because you're waiting for this Dalai Lama to die, but His Holiness is planning to live for very long.
Absolutely, and let us hope he lives for long, because he's such a soothing influence, not just for us in this subcontinent, but also for the whole world. Mr. Tsering, as the political leader of the Tibetan diaspora, how do you see the future of Tibet?
Well, still, it has already been almost 66 years since we came into exile, and 75 years since we lost our country, since 1951. So we have been struggling against, and we don't even like to call China enemy, our opponent, a very strong opponent, and we are only about a little more than 7 million Tibetans inside Tibet and 40,000 Tibetans in exile. But despite our strength in relation with China, we have survived over the last 65 years. And one reason is because of His Holiness' leadership throughout these years, decades, and His Holiness always not just think about the present, but he thinks very, very long term. And then the Tibetans inside Tibet, even after 65 years of repression, they are still not cowed down by Chinese pressure, even though China uses all kinds of artificial intelligence to control and surveil people, give Tibetans no political space, and put in place all policies and programs aimed at eradication of Tibetan national identity, including Tibetan language, which came from India. The Tibetan script came from India, from the Devanagari script in 7th century. Buddhism came to Tibet in 8th century. So China is right now striking at the very root of our identity. So that is why we have to, of course, if there has to be a solution to the Sino-Tibet conflict, then it has to come by talking with the Chinese government, which we have been aiming to do. And His Holiness had always come out with this middleway policy, which is also based on ancient Indian wisdom. So when we talk about middleway, then you are also talking about polarities.
Right.
So one polarity is the historical status of Tibet as an independent state in the past. And then other polarity is the present situation of Tibetans under the occupied by Chinese, under the repressive Chinese communist government. So we are trying to seek a middle way, and we feel that this is the right way to do it, and we are trying to reach out to the Chinese government as much as possible. Till such a time that there is a solution, a peaceful solution, then we have to reach out to the international community, which we are all doing right now.
Right. Now, Mr. Tsering, from your answer, I've got, 2-3 questions. You have been in dialogue with the Chinese that was until 2010 when it was halted. But, you have kept the back channel communication links open in the hope that there will be a government that will be understanding in Beijing and things will change. My question is, do you still believe at a negotiated outcome of the Tibetan aspirations?
Of course, we have to keep engaging with China in whatever possible means. But right now, if you look at what President Xi Jinping is doing inside Tibet and to the whole of China, there it doesn't look very likely that there could be a solution for Tibet. But we have to keep engaging.
Right. And you also referred to His Holiness's, middle way approach. My question is, do you think the middle way approach is relevant in today? in view of the assertiveness of China and what you said Chinese has been doing in Tibet?
We have to take reality into consideration. There is not one single country who have been supporting Tibet historically. It was for the first time last year, the United States government passed this Resolve Tibet Act, where it cautions the legitimacy of the Chinese control over Tibet, wherein it says that they do not accept, because Chinese government always says there is no Tibet problem. And the Resolve Tibet Act says that Tibet is yet to be resolved problem, and it needs to be resolved under international law, that the Tibetan people have the right to self-determination, and the US government does not accept China's narrative that Tibet has been part of China since ancient times. So these are new developments that has taken place over the last 2-3 years because of the efforts that we have been making with governments. So we would like to take this to other like-minded countries to see how they will adapt, will support in the same way. So we believe that middle way, non-violence, mutually beneficial, negotiated solution would be lasting. Any other solution other than non-violence cannot be lasting.
Right. You talked about the Resolve Tibet Act. Yes, the Resolve Tibet Act has been passed by the US Senate. Now, you are pinning a lot of hopes on this because you think that this act will enable you to talk to the international community from a position of strength, isn't it? And what is the update now?
Yeah, we're still reaching out. Now we have new immediate problems. Right now I'm in Washington, D.C. Of course, we have become a collateral damage in the process of the new administration's policy to cut foreign aid, and we are working relentless to see how we can restore this back with the administration, and we remain hopeful. So we have to keep working, even though you know that we have deficiency in human resources, and financial resources. But despite all that, because of the goodwill of His Holiness the Dalai Lama around the world, we still have Tibet issue still alive and kicking. And we are also moving around the world to work with governments to see how the support for Tibet can be sustained in the long run.
Sekyong, has the Trump administration, the present Trump administration, appointed a special coordinator for Tibet? Because during Trump's first term, we saw that US had reduced the budget for Tibetan issues. What is the situation now?
Well, there's still a lot of things going on in the State Department. There are reorganization things happening, restructuring happening. And even now, there are a lot of talks going on within the State Departments readjusting themselves. So I think it's too early to say. During the first, as you mentioned, during the first Trump administration, they appointed the special coordinator for Tibetan issues in the 4th year. And during the Biden administration, it was in the 1st year. Now we are looking forward to the president's 2nd term. And we are asking all our friends to impress upon the administration to do that. And we have a good friend in Marco Rubio, who is now the Secretary of State. He had championed the cause of Tibet. I wrote to him personally on February 27th, and he replied back to me on March 10th, signifying the importance of that letter, because March 10th was Tibetan National Uprising Day.
Yeah.
And he had expressed reiterated U.S. government's support for Tibet politically, but financially, as I mentioned before, we have become a collateral, so we still have to work towards restoring that back.
Now you are in the United States. You have been meeting congressmen at the Capitol last couple of days. What is the sense that you get? Do you think that special coordinator for Tibet is going to be appointed this time around?
No, there's no clarity on any of these issues right now. Nobody has a definitive answer as to what is going to happen in the next 1 or 2 weeks. But there are a lot of discussions going on between the State Department and the Congress on budget, on a lot of other things as we are moving around at the Hill here in Washington, D.C. So I think it'll to get some clarity on where things are going to go.
No, coming to India, Mr. Tsering, I mean, the Tibetan government is headquartered in India, in Dharamshala. Now, what do you expect from India in realistic terms? Let's be real. What do you think India can do? What do you expect from India in realistic terms, really?
Now, as I have always said, we have to take two realities into consideration. One thing is that if there has to be a peaceful resolution to Tibet, then there's no other way than by talking with the Chinese government. And the other reality is that when we reach out to governments around the world, then they will take their national interests into consideration first. They will not leave their national interest for the interests of Tibet. So for India, also the same thing. But with India, we have much more stronger, deeper historical, cultural, linguistic relationships. And then, of course, from Jammu Kashmir to Burma, we have this more than 4,000 kilometers of border between India and Tibet. That is why a lot of when we talk about India-China relations, then Tibet always comes. Without Tibet is the elephant in the room. If you behave as if you don't see the elephant in the room, then it's not going to work out. The Tibet issue needs to be resolved if there has to be peace in South Asia, and particularly between China and India. To build better trust between these two countries, it's very important that the Sino-Tibet conflict is resolved.
Right. Now, how do you see the India-China ties, India-China relations in the context of the border dispute? China claiming the whole of Arunachal Pradesh, for instance, and giving Chinese names to places in Arunachal Pradesh. How do you look at it?
This has always been the strategy of the Chinese government to contain India, whether it's relation with Pakistan or whether it's offenses on the border, whether it's from Galwan to Ladakh. So this has been the bone of contention, and this definitely involves Tibet also. So that is why, if the Sino-Tibet conflict is resolved, then the border issue will also be resolved. Then there will be more trust between India and China. Then there can be, because right now Indo-Tibet border is one of the most non-porous border in the world. So it's very important that the Sino-Tibet conflict is resolved to make sure that there is more peace and stability in the region.
Now, we are talking about China giving names, and you said that has been the strategy for the Chinese for long. But we have seen that China is giving Chinese names to areas in the Indo-Pacific, along the South and East China Sea, for example, in the proximity of Japan and Taiwan.
Around 20 years back, when I was once in the United States, I told one of my senior friends that at that time they were talking about air defense identification zone. So when China can claim the air, then they will claim everything under that air. And that is what exactly had happened. Now, in the last few years, their strategy has been to use only Chinese names for all the islands in the South China Sea, which are disputed with other countries, with whether it's Japan or Taiwan or Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam, Brunei, all these countries. So they also pressure governments to use Xizang in place of Tibet, because their understanding is that, or their explanation is that when you say Xizang, then it refers only to Tibet Autonomous Region. And when you say Tibet, it refers to all the three provinces of the traditional Tibet. So this has not just implications in name change and removing the very background or historical background of the name, but also a lot of political connotations in terms of geography and its extent.
Right. Now, again, you have yourself said that there is a convergence between the Indian and Tibetan thought processes, because you believe in the Nalanda tradition of Buddhism. But what about the young Tibetans, who are growing up in Tibet under the Chinese influence? Do you think they will have the same regard, the same respect, or same feeling towards India as the elderly Tibetans, for example? Is it a cause for worry?
So far, as you say, every Tibetan have respect for India because we consider India as the land of the Buddha, the Aryabharat. So every Tibetan would like to come to India for pilgrimage to Bodh Gaya, Lumbini, or wherever. But now, what the Chinese government is doing in the form of colonial-style boarding schools by putting all the Tibetans in boarding school, residential schools, not allowing them to learn Tibetan or Buddhism, whatever. So in the libraries also, they have removed all books connected with the identity of the Tibetan people. Now they are being taught communist ideology, loyalty to the Communist Party. So the whole idea is to change the mindset of the whole lot of younger generations of Tibetans. And then just a few years ago, there were also questions about China recruiting Tibetans in the army. So the same question came up. That is why I say now with the Chinese idea of changing the mindset of all the younger generations of Tibetans, this will definitely have implications for India's security from how younger generations of Tibetans perceive India.
Another thing, before I let you go, Mr. Tsering, China seems to be trying to consolidate its hold and push its interest in the neighborhood of Northeast India, now particularly Bangladesh and Myanmar. Now, we have seen the Bangladesh interim administrator, Muhammad Yunus, visiting China and inviting the Chinese to come and expand its economy along the borders of Northeast India. Now, how do you look at this development? Because there has been a lot of sharp reactions from several quarters in Northeast India, particularly this Muhammad Yunus's open invitation to the Chinese to come and operate from along the Northeast Indian border and expand its economy.
I think that also reflects on some say warming up of relations between India and China. And when China is doing all these things around India to create discomfort for India, then how is this going to warm up the relations? It's not just the Kailash Mansarovar is going to contribute to warming up relations. It's just one element of the relationship. I'm more bothered about the water bomb that China is creating inside Tibet in the form of this mega dam.
Yes.
It will produce more than almost 3 times the electricity than the largest dam in the world, which is also in China, the Three Gorges. And the whole Himalayas is a seismic zone, and you are very much located in that area in downstream Brahmaputra. And if China builds this mega dam in Tibet and inundates a lot of upstream areas with this water, and if because of the earthquake or any other reason, natural disaster, if something happens to that size of a dam, it could have severe human catastrophe downstream in Arunachal Pradesh, Assam, and Bangladesh. I think that is. But then, of course, there will be geopolitical developments all the time. China will try to use its influence in Burma and Bangladesh. It's not just that. You know how ASEAN works. China keeps Cambodia and Laos and some countries under their fold to make sure that there's no consensus in ASEAN against China on anything. So they do the same thing with Europe. They do that with every multinational formation that is there to make sure that their wishes are carried out, and then the opposition to their positions are eliminated. And that is what they've been doing. And that's not good, because when you talk about US-China relation, China always says we are not being treated equal. Now, when you talk about India-China relations or Southeast Asian countries' relations with China, these countries are also saying China is not treating us as equals. So every sovereign nation should be doing the same. And today, China is portraying themselves as the good guys, whereas the rest of the world, or including America, as the bad guys. So now there is a lot of twists in stories that are going around in the international community. So we have to see how this tariff war shapes out and how geopolitics works out because of the influence or implications of this tariff war. Right now, everybody is occupied with tariff.
No, after the tariff war, we have seen some Chinese overtures towards India because they wanted to reopen the direct flights. And the Chinese diplomat based in Kolkata, the consul general, talking about the need for India and China to work together and so on and so forth, that India is a huge market and so on. Do you think the tariff war is going to force China to move closer to India as far as push its interests? Or do you think it is too early, or do you think these are cosmetic overtures that should not be read much into?
I think it's more than cosmetic because it's in China's interest to reach out to the global South markets because China's export to the United States is 27% of their export volume. And if they cannot sell it to the United States, that they will have to sell it somewhere else. So you must have heard reports about Chinese government asking Commerce Ministry officials and Foreign Office officials not to take any leave so that they can concentrate on all that. All ambassadors were called to Beijing, and you saw the Chinese ambassador in Calcutta or in Delhi or anywhere around the world with a similar position to look out for new markets. So it's in China's interest that they are reaching out to India. It's not because China wants better relation with India that they're doing this. It's definitely very strategic for China.
China is also creating debt economies in the neighborhood, by providing or extending huge loans to poor countries and bringing them under its grip. Do you think Bangladesh and Myanmar are also going to fall into this trap?
They have already fallen into the trap. There are so many countries who have debt with China through the BRI programs and all that. So people have to be wary of China. The fact that Xi Jinping went to Cambodia, to Vietnam, and to Malaysia was to build a coalition against the U.S. tariff war. But at the same time, his second ambition is to make sure that these countries don't raise tariffs for the products that Chinese government is going to dump into these countries, which will destroy all the small and medium industries in these countries. So these countries are also worried. You hear the Singapore finance minister, you hear the Malaysian finance minister, Philippines finance minister, Vietnamese finance minister. Everybody is worried about China's aggression and the dumping of goods that will definitely affect these countries in a major way. So now everybody is in a very difficult position whether they should side with the United States or China. Both sides are pressurizing. So let's see how things evolve.
Finally, Mr. Tsering, how would you describe the situation in Tibet today? And I had the privilege of interviewing His Holiness the Dalai Lama as a young reporter in the mid-90s at the helipad or the airstrip in Itanagar. Today, Itanagar is an airport. Those days, it was a small airstrip. And I had the privilege of having an exclusive interview with His Holiness. And on that occasion, I still remember His Holiness saying that, we don't want to be totally independent from China. We can even stay within China. That's no problem, provided our identity is recognized, our autonomy is recognized and respectfully given to us. Has that position changed over the years?
No, it's the same. That is what middleway is all about. So whether we like it or not, our civilization started in Tibet, on the roof of this world. Right, also referred to as the roof of the world, the third pole, and the source of Asian rivers. So we always lived in that on the mountains, and whether we like it or not, we don't have an Indian Hanuman god to lift Tibet out of that place and put it somewhere in the Arabian Sea or Bay of Bengal, very close to you. So we have to live as neighbors, and as humanity, we have lived as neighbors for so many centuries. Why can't we live as neighbors in a peaceful way? And when we have to live as neighbors, then it's better to be peaceful with each other, in harmony with each other, instead of fighting with each other. What are human beings born for? To help each other. Yeah.
Absolutely. Mr. Penpa Tsering, thanks for your time. And I want to make a televised request to you that I have done your interview tonight. And I would request you if I can interview His Holiness the Dalai Lama for this only English and Hindi satellite news channel in Northeast India. There will be nothing like that. It will be great to do that.
Thank you for inviting me. His Holiness is 90. He meets with general audience. He gives general audience for 400, 500 people 3 times in a week, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
Absolutely.
But despite that, now we don't encourage too many long interviews with His Holiness. We want His Holiness to rest.
Absolutely.
And that is what we look for.
Absolutely. But I am still optimistic. Mr. Penpa Tsering, thank you very much for joining me in this special edition of Talk Time.
Thank you, Hussain.